We're getting into December now, and I wanted to go over the trip that Joleen and I just went around the world to meet some of our distributors for CHEMI-PURE and to get an overview of our dive adventures together. So we've been literally diving since 1980. As a matter of fact, it was October 12th of 1980, Columbus Day Regatta. I took Joleen out on the first date on the boat to take her diving. I had never been out with her anywhere, so really cool idea. I figured, we'll get her on the boat, she'll wear a bikini. That did work. Our trip went around the world going into the sun, and we went first from Miami to Doha in Qatar. We have a new distributor for CHEMI-PURE there in Doha, and we also went and visited and met with Tony Vargas at his neat brand new shop. Joleen and I went out with Tony and his wife and spent a day talking about aquariums, talking about the future of aquariums in Doha. It's a major city and there's massive buildings. I mean, it's just tremendous potential for running a coral reef aquarium business and store there. I could imagine there could be very large reef aquariums built there through the next 10 years or longer, and then really tremendous amount of services that could happen there too. So we spent a couple days in Qatar, and then we went back on Qatar Air and flew to Adelaide, which is South Australia.
Flying foxes everywhere!
That's another long 14-hour flight, and we're flying looking out the port side of the plane going towards Adelaide, and lo and behold, there in front of me was the western side of Australia, and it's my first time view of Australia. Took a photo outside the plane looking at it. We landed in Adelaide, checked into our hotel. One of the first things I do typically when I go into a new city in a new country is look at aquarium stores, and I phoned and found a Tropical Marine Center aquarium there, which is a great store, and we literally the next day took an Uber over and visited the store.
We made the Seaview Aquarium Center. We're gonna go check out and see if they have any CHEMI-PURE. Come on in.
The owner's name was Sean, and the manager on duty that day, his name is Rick. Rick's been working with Sean for 33 years. That's a fascinating number to have an aquarium store for that long, but it's really well stocked, fresh water, salt water, and interestingly enough, of course, all of the corals, and I believe the inverts have to be Australian, sold in Australia. You can't import corals and whatnot into Australia. So they had this treasure trove of beautiful corals, another really super neat shop there. So from there, we went the next morning and took a flight from Adelaide to Port Lincoln. It's about a 1-hour flight. And we got on the FV Rodney Fox that afternoon, met with the crew, went through the orientation, and then headed out that evening towards the Neptune Islands. The first thing they do is they have you stop in at a location where there's seals on the beach, or sea lions. We snorkeled around, dove around with those that morning, and then you get back in the boat and then roll off down towards the South Neptunes. The weather was great. Of course, what we're going to the South Neptunes for is to see white sharks. Rodney Fox is a really famous guy who was bit by a white shark in Australia many years ago and decided to spend his time and his ambitions towards understanding sharks and recognizing that they're not out to eat man. That's really not their diet. To help people learn and educate people about healthy sharks and how healthy they are for the environment. So we were with Stephen Frank there, who has been a board member with CRF for many years, and Mike Echevarria, who also was chairman of the board with CRF in the years that I was working with CRF on their board. And we had plenty of time together to communicate about, what's happened this past year in the Florida Keys with the heat event and the coral bleaching that took place this summer, and really talk about the future and what is the strategy with Atlantic coral reefs and coral restoration. So we really had some great one-on-one time talking about that during the trip. We spent 5 nights on the FV Rodney Fox. Every day we dove with white sharks, either in the surface cage or down on the bottom. They'd send you down with a cage that's on a big boom off the ship that goes down to 55, 60 feet, and then you're up off the floor a little, so the cage is kind of moving back and forth with the waves or the current or the way the vessel moves. And literally sharks are from me to you, right there in front of you. They swim right up. Saw some blue grouper. And then I saw lots of other neat fish that are there in the cold water. The water was 58 to 59 degrees, super cold. We had 7mm wetsuits and also had an electric vest that I determined that I wanted to buy before I left. And then Joleen and I shared that. So I would do a dive in the cage, and then she would do a dive later in the cage. So we actually never dove together in the cage. There was really no need for, but that electric vest was just a wonderful lifesaver to keep you warm while you're diving. It was just really super cool. So from there, we get another day, flew back to Adelaide again, and then overnighted in Adelaide, and then the next morning got up early and flew to Cairns. Of course, the first thing you do when you go to Cairns is go to Cairns Marine, which is really the preeminent net-collected Australian fish supplier for the world. One of the most respected collecting facilities in the world. Of course, all permitted, legal. Lyle there and Lee were super great, gave us a full tour of the facilities, saw all sorts of different marine life that they supply to public and private aquariums, and then to different wholesalers and importers across the world. And I can't say enough good about how tremendous a facility that is, and how it was great to see the animals before we went diving off to the Coral Sea and the Great Barrier Reef. So we spent a day there. Next day we got on the Spoil Sport, which is the Mike Ball Adventures dive vessel. It's about a 92-foot aluminum cat built in 1989, so over 30 years old, and really well laid out. Upper deck, dive stations downstairs, your own in-suite bungalows with a bathroom and shower, and great food the whole time. We spent 4 nights on that vessel. We took the vessel out first to Bougainvillea Reef at night. It's about 110 miles offshore. Dove Bougainvillea Reef, which was really fascinating. We had the opportunity to do the typical diving is you're on an edge, you're on a wall, you're gonna do a 90-foot. We're doing nitrox, so we usually have a tendency to stick, max out is 108 on nitrox, but we're really sticking around 90. Joleen and I agree, through the years of diving together, we don't really need to go that much deeper. So you can do 90, it's top to bottom visibility, tremendous amounts of shoals of fish, unbelievable stony corals everywhere. Blue acros, pink acros, green acros, Ritterei anemones, and the plethora of fish, all types of species. Just incredible. There was fish everywhere, and all of the coral in the Coral Sea was alive. I can't remember that I saw a damaged coral, maybe a damaged coral or a hit, but not any dead or dying or bleached corals at all. Bougainvillea was the first night, and then that evening we went up to Osprey Reef. Osprey Reef is a northernmost reef there in the Coral Sea. It's again another massive, all submerged reef area with big, deep water everywhere, massive drop-offs, plenty of healthy reef sharks, I saw dogtooth tuna, just incredible. So the plan was to dive Osprey for a day and then go back over towards the Barrier Reef, towards Lizard Island. However, the weather was pretty rough. So we decided we're gonna stay at Osprey Reef for 2 days straight. So that's what we did. One of our climax dives on the second day was going to North Horn, where they do a shark dive. Joleen and I really haven't been on shark dives other than these 2 times in Australia, the white sharks, and now up to North Australia. And we did also like a cathedral dive where they have some tuna heads on a ball that goes up, and probably 80, 100 reef sharks all around us, big, huge potato cods. So 2 days of nonstop diving. Joleen and I did either 2 or 3 dives per day. And then the final evening, they played some music. We had a really nice dinner, went to sleep. And then again, the captain drove us a boat overnight. Woke up before the sunrise, got out with the camera, took some photos of sunrise and the moon setting at the same time. And there in front of us was Lizard Island. That's a really famous spot on the north side of the Barrier Reef, all the way up to the north. And we were going to Lizard Island to spend some time there that morning and then literally fly back from Lizard Island back to Cairns again. So we ended up getting to Lizard Island, went for a little tour, looked for the lizards. We flew out of Lizard Island, that was great. Flew over the Barrier Reef, back down to Cairns. And stayed at the Hilton there for that one night. Went back to Cairns Marine, spent some more time with Lyle and their team looking at some marine life to potentially ship back to Florida. And it was just another great experience. They had a shipment of coral in, some nice scolies and other corals. It's really fascinating how well managed the marine life fishery and coral fishery is in East Australia and West Australia. Again, a really prime example, like our fisheries management with FWC in the state of Florida, and how well that fishery is managed too. And then from there, we flew to Brisbane, and our intent in Brisbane was to meet with Tim and Robin from Aqua Blue, which is our distributor for CHEMI-PURE in all of Australia. They have a really nice facility, and spent a day with them talking about how the marketplace is in Australia and how to develop responsible aquarists, and having beautiful aquariums is just a tremendous educational tool for anybody between freshwater and saltwater. But Robin and Tim, we went out to a nice dinner with them, met their dogs. They're super cute dogs, and had a great time talking with them and spent another full day with them in Brisbane. From Brisbane, we had already had some referrals down in Sydney. Lyle from Cairns Marine had emailed Laura Simmons, who now is running the Sea Life Sydney Aquarium in Sydney, and we knew we were going to go into Sydney for 4 nights as well. We flew in and stayed at the Marriott right there at the Quay Center, right at Sydney Harbor, and literally with a view from our window of the Opera House. I had bought tickets to see a performance of Yundi Plays Mozart, which is a famous Chinese pianist. It was really wonderful. We had a lunch at Benelong, which is right there at the Opera House. And then the next day we woke up and went over to Sea Life to meet with Laura Simmons. Went for a real tour. I had never seen a dugong. Joleen and I had never seen one in captivity. I think there's 3 in the world. They have one now that they've had for about 20 years. And just a tremendous amount of marine life, freshwater life. They have a zoo associated with it that's all run by Merlin Entertainment or owned by Merlin Entertainment. And Laura Simmons was just a wealth of information, super great aquarist, very knowledgeable, very professional. I've done a lot of training and helping with the animals in their facility since she's been there for a few years now in Sydney. Went to the Sydney seafood market and went and saw what is really the 2nd largest seafood market in the world next to Tokyo. It was an unbelievable experience to go through there, just all types of fresh seafood available. I ordered up a live lobster that was done Szechuan style, and Joleen had some great oysters, some with caviar and salmon roe. And then finally, the following day, we went to Bondi Beach, which was really cool. I'd seen that from surfing for years. And we went to the Iceberg Club, which they have a swimming pool associated to the seashore.
Oh, it's chilly. These people are crazy.
Where the water comes in and the water goes out through a pool, so you're swimming with no wetsuits in 58-degree water. It's really crazy. But that was beautiful coastline there. And then the next day we took a ferry over to Manly Beach.
Well, we have made it to Manly. And what do you notice in the water?
Lots of jellyfish everywhere.
Oh, we're doing jellyfish research today. Yes, I see them. They are everywhere.
And went over to Manly Beach, which is a really famous spot. There's divers and snorkelers swimming around out there. The water was crystal clear.
And the kids are all out surfing while their backpacks and everything sits unattended. There's surf school, Manly Beach.
And it was just beautiful scenery, just a really phenomenal time in Sydney. And then we went from Sydney to Honolulu. That was again a night flight. Landed in Honolulu in the morning with the intent on spending a few days in Waikiki, which is where we stayed at the Mona Surf Rider. And we went and met with Stuart at the Waikiki Aquarium. He's the new director there, and went for a whole tour of the Waikiki Aquarium. We hadn't been there in over 20 years, saw all the tremendous amount of coral growth, lots of healthy fish. We went to dinner, obviously, with Stuart that evening, and I spoke with Stuart about the marine life trade and the worldwide aquariums trade all across the world. He has a lot of experience coming from South Africa. And then we went to a dive. We went with Oahu divers out of the harbor there near Waikiki and did a 2-tank dive and saw all the really healthy coral, believe it or not, out in front of Waikiki. There was all types, mostly Porites styles of corals. And I saw obviously lots of yellow tangs, coal tangs, Moorish idols. I even saw a little flame angel, cleanerasses, some eels, and a bunch of turtles. That was really neat to see lots of turtles out in front. And that 2-tank dive was a really nice experience to go dive in Waikiki. We haven't been diving in Hawaii again for almost 20 years. Then again, another get together with the guys from Biota, James there who's going to the yellow tangs, and then Manu, who is the general manager for Biota Worldwide. He happened to be flying back from the United States to Waikiki to meet with James and then back off to Palau where he's based out of. So we had another really nice evening at Duke's with those guys, talked a lot about coral reef conservation and all the great work they're doing to be breeding so many different species of fish. Really great meeting with them, supporting the work that Biota's doing too. That was the bigger side of our trip into Hawaii. We had already been now 30 days on the road, and from there we flew to LA, and both of us ended up getting the cold. So we were going to LA to go to the wholesalers and meet up with them. Instead, we ended up staying in the hotel and trying to get better, and then flew LA back home. So we've been back in town sometime since the 15th of November. After so many years of diving together, it was just another great adventure for us to finally make it to Australia. A nice trip after 34 years, so we've now been married 34 years, and it was a 34-day trip. We saw a lot, we learned a lot, and came back refreshed and ready to attack and build some really fabulous aquariums in 2024. So remember to like, subscribe, and maybe we'll see you in Australia one day.